What made you comfortable sharing something so personal, and start actually not just writing a book, but building a brand around it?
Yeah, I think when I realized how badly I had suffered, and then as I did start to kind of share a little bit, I realized that there's a lot more of me out there suffering in silence.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Published and Paid podcast. On this episode, I am extremely excited to bring a very special guest and a valued member of our Impact University family and community with you. I have here Darius Fennell, and he is the author of an amazing book about overcoming or tapping into your anxiety recovery. So Darius, please introduce yourself. Let us know all about your book.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And so my name is Darius Fennell. I am a published author, a speaker, coach, and I published Leaving Jupiter, Navigating Your Anxiety Recovery through the Impact University. And my mission behind what I do is to dismantle stigmas as well as provide educational resources for mental health and encourage people to sync up and connect with licensed professionals. So, Leaving Jupiter was birthed out of my own personal journey with anxiety, which I've had all my life and officially diagnosed back in early 2018, where I went through a very bad episode and panic attack that put me in the hospital for a week. And they ran endless tests and couldn't find anything, sent me home the same way that I came in. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. All they told me to do was to follow up with my primary care physician. And like, all right, what are the next steps? Because this thing hasn't gone anywhere and it's not getting any better. And so years later, my mindset out of empathy was, what would I say to the version of myself that was sent home from the hospital, to give them a framework and a system to navigate from where you are and being stuck in anxiety, debilitating and chronic anxiety, to finding your way back to really a new identity, because you can't go back to the old way. So that's where that came from. I had a desire to write a book probably as early as 2019. Didn't know how to do it because I'd never written a book before. I tried to do some stuff in Canva. I also tried to do some stuff on my own. And then I met Jasmine and realized that I needed some help. So that was kind of how that whole journey had culminated into where I am today. So
That's amazing. That is amazing. Not a lot of men talk about mental health.
right.
A lot of men, especially a lot of Black men, do not talk about, mental health or how they navigate mental health or their journey through mental health.
Right.
What made you comfortable sharing something so personal, and start actually not just writing a book, but building a brand around it?
Yeah, I think when I realized how badly I had suffered, and then as I did start to kind of share a little bit, I realized that there's a lot more of me out there suffering in silence. And so when you think about like what motivates you or what your why is, like I love to encourage people. I love to help people heal. I love to help people to get unstuck. Like those are things that I'm going to naturally do anyway. I'm driven to do that. Like I don't feel complete if I'm not acting in that capacity, because it's who I am. And so I needed a platform, a system to allow that to come out. And so that's where the Impact University came in. But one of the first times that I actually shared publicly what I was dealing with, I was actually at church. And Jasmine, you know me, I'm not one to run to a mic and draw attention to myself and want to be seen by everybody. That's never been me. And it was one of the rare Sundays that they had like testimony time. And I'm like, all right, this is where I kind of sit down and act like I'm on my phone and, wait for y'all to finish. My daughter at the time, I think she was maybe 5 or 6. And she nearly like pushed me out of my row and was like, Daddy, you need to share. And I was like, shh, like be quiet, like eat your snacks and leave me alone. And then she pushed me one more time and they got the person on the stage, got their attention. They were like, oh, Darius, you want to share? And I was like, all right. And So the thing was, like, I was still kind of in the middle of that recovery journey, and I was like, I don't know if I really want to do this because what if I like fall or have a relapse or something, and now like I'm a fraud. But one of the things I learned about sharing the stuff, like where I was and being vulnerable, there were so many people who came to me after service or even on social media. It was like, man, thank you for sharing that. Here's what I went through, or here's what I'm going through now, and da da da. I'm like, wait, you like I had no idea. I thought, we all wear the mask, right? So I'm like, man, I thought you had it all together, and I thought it was just me. But and then there was another person on Instagram who is a licensed therapist, and I shared some stuff with her, and she said, and she'd followed my page for a while, but that first year that I went on Instagram, I didn't show my face at all. I wasn't doing no videos. It were just like kind of memes that I was making in Canva. And she said, you need to be visible. You need to tell your story. And for whatever reason, that particular time, like it really convicted me. And I was like, okay, I'll start to do that. But I knew it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough just to be, sharing the stuff that I went through. I needed a way to distribute more widely to have an impact. And so I know I needed to write a book, but I didn't know how. And so I did a keyword search on Instagram, and you, Jasmine, were one of the folks that came up. And I would say, out of consistency, you going live is what really drew me in, to just listen to the system and listen to your own journey and what is necessary to put together a story and not just tell your story and not just make it about yourself, but have strategies and things that people can utilize, and establishing a brand. Like all that was new to me. I didn't know anything about that, but I'm like, well, I'll just buy a book. So I got the book, I got the autograph copy. I'm like, I'm gonna do this myself. And that thing was horrible. I think I found it when I was cleaning. It was just it was bad compared to after you've been through the system and the modules. I was like, I don't know what I thought I was doing, but I'm so glad that I actually enrolled in the program and have a system to go through and a community to connect with and be accountable. That was the biggest thing. So
Yeah, so I mean, and that's not to say like the book is good, but you realize that having that additional layer of accountability,
yes,
was helpful in helping you to create an even better product.
absolutely.
After you compared your manuscript, the do-it-yourself version versus the version with actual guidance. So let me ask you this, because you are an engineer by trade,
Yes,
and prior to this you had no experience, as an entrepreneur. You
no,
had no type of business or anything. So you started your business with your book, and now you're expanding and branching out.
yes,
So as a professional, in your career, how did you deal with the fears and even the mindset, some of the mindset issues that come up or that came up when you were on this new path of writing your book,
yeah,
putting your experiences and your expertise into this book, and then having to navigate work, home,
yeah,
children, all of the things. Like how did you navigate that?
yeah. It was a lot of I had to find balance. I would say that's the first key thing is, when I first met you and we had our discovery call, I was so fired up. I'm like, man, I'm about to tear this book up and, do all the things. And then you find out that, life be life and things that are really out of your control. Right.
Right.
Um, and then you have like certain doubts that honestly, I didn't realize that they were that strong or even as present as they were because I'd already been through therapy. I'm like, again, like I thought we dealt with this, but healing happens in layers. So I think going back to the connection and community, it's not just about saying, oh, I'm going to write a book, but having a commitment to say, how often are you going to work on your book?
Mhm.
Have you expressed how often you're going to do that to someone who can ask and say, hey, remember you made this commitment to do XYZ? Just checking in to see how that's going. you know that was a huge help for me because A couple times I had coaches come in my DM say, "Hey man, I haven't seen you in a while." And I'm like, "Oh man, let me let me stop using the things that are going on in my life as an excuse." Now, there's a difference between like having a family emergency or illness, right? Like take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of your health. But there shouldn't be like 6 months or a year gone by and you're still in the same spot, you know. um, Getting back to the whole commitment issue, but also announcing that is what really brought me through because I made a commitment to say every Monday I'm going to come in the support groups, regardless of what progress that I made, and say where I am and be vulnerable. That was another huge part
Mhm.
where I was met at my place of vulnerability and found encouragement, and also others who said, "You know what? I've been where you are. Here's what I did." And here's how I was able to overcome that. And so I latched onto that and said, well, if you did it, I can do it. And next thing you know, I developed something that I call, I don't know if this is trademarked already, but I call it mandatory minimums, right? What is something you can commit to that regardless of how you feel, what's going on, how tired you are, how sleepy you are, you can do this on a weekly basis. And I started there. And from that point, I began to stack on top of it. Okay, well, since I was able to do, 3 days a week at half an hour, maybe next week it's an hour, or the week after that, it's 4 times a week. Or you start to find where things are effective and things that aren't effective, and you communicate that back with your community group and fine tune it even some more.
Mhm.
So the more I did that, the more, especially once I saw the finish line, I was like, all right, forget the mandatory minimums. We're almost there. Full system go, full throttle. And when I got my book sent off to the editor, I was like, okay, it's real now. It's real, and I'm going the full distance. And so the difference between my old way of doing stuff, which was always a combination of like brute force and passion, right? I think you need some of that, but it's not sustainable, right? You need something that is going to be allow you to be consistent in what you do to see results, to make incremental, progressive results, so
Mhm.
that you can build a momentum. So, regardless of what's happening, the other important thing that is happening within you and in your mind is that you're becoming conditioned to who you are becoming, which is a whole new person. Which is, I think, when I was in the system, one of the first modules was about the growth mindset,
Mhm.
becoming the whole person. Before you get into whole, writing the book or doing anything along those lines, you have to deal with you. And so, even when I got done and published the book and put it out there and started selling it, there were some other things that came to the surface to where I was like, you know what? I decided to go back to therapy because I'm like, I'm not going to let this ruin, the progress and the success that I made, so far with having these old programs and mindsets of telling me, within my own brain, it's nobody's going to read that. It's not good enough. You don't have any training in psychology or any mental health background. I'm like, well, maybe I don't, but I still have a lot of important things to say because of my lived experience and my connection with licensed professionals that I can share with others. So,
That's so good. You broke down so much. The connecting in, with your community. Reaching out to ask for help when you need it. Like a lot of people don't ask for help
yeah,
because they feel like if they ask a question, then they're going to look like they don't know what they're doing. Like I've had people say this, and I'm like, I don't get it. You're in here so you can get the help you need. Ask the question.
right.
So asking questions, connecting to community,
Yeah,
um, seeking feedback from people that's been there, done that, and gotten through it. The mandatory minimums,
yes,
like that is honestly like a groundbreaking framework because at this point it's like what can I do? It's not about doing everything. It's about moving 1% forward.
right.
What can I do? What's the minimum that I can do? And I'm going to hold myself to this to make sure that I am doing something
Yes,
every single day
yes,
to work towards my goals.
exactly. And that was something I had explained to one of the fellow impact students, was that writing is not the only part of the writing process, right? There was a couple of times where I'm like, man, I feel like I won't call it writer's block, but I kind of felt like just a little loss of
Mhm,
momentum
mhm,
in terms of like the flow. And I was like, you know what? Let me go back and visit my avatar. Let me go back and revisit. We had to do some things where we did a competitive research to see what types of things like your competitors, like the comments and reviews they were getting from other people. Have you said everything you needed to say to meet the solutions that the your reader is going to be looking for, right? And so once you go back and review those things, you may spot a couple of items that I could put a little more clarity here, or I didn't quite say everything I needed to say to really get my point across. And just looking at the avatar of the person who's going to be reading this, is there anything additional I needed to
Mhm.
add in there? And a lot of times the answer was, yeah, you could add a couple of more elements here. And then by the time you started to pick your brain and gain some momentum, you're back in the flow again. So do something, do something, read something, review something, keep your brain, your wheels spinning. And before you know it, like you'll get that momentum back. But condition yourself to, oh, here was the other important piece, and probably I would say the biggest thing that I'm going to reuse now when it comes to where I want to go. And I think I mentioned this in one of the groups about the visual affirmations. Jasmine, you had us do a vision board. This was one of the workshops I'd attended like probably 2 or 3 years ago, but I kept it. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna revisit this thing. And so one of the pictures has like somebody, I think, standing holding a book or doing something that was book related. And so every day, I don't care how I felt, I would wake up and say, I am a published author, among other things that I would affirm as well. But I started to notice that it would affect my everyday action, where I felt like,
Mhm.
I need to write, or I need to work on this. Because once you begin to really accept and move into who you really are, it's going to affect what you do. Writers write, speakers speak. They have to. It's who they are. Encouragers are going to encourage. It's who you are. And once
Yeah.
you step into that, then it's like, well, this is no longer a grueling task anymore. This is just something as a part of my life, and I have to do it.
Right,
Right.
right, right. So let's pivot a bit because you didn't just stop at your book. And I want to piggyback on like that what you share is a phenomenal way to hold yourself accountable.
Right.
What I've seen is like, especially when people tend to join group coaching programs, they stop holding themselves accountable and they want other people or their coach to hold them accountable. And so they don't show up, they don't do all these things, and it becomes like pulling teeth. But you created your own way
Yeah.
to hold yourself accountable to the goal that you wanted to set.
Right.
I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Um now now one of the things, you published your book, but with an engineering background, I know you're kind of used to being in the background. So how did you become comfortable with creating content, being out in front, and pretty much being a spokesperson for your own product?
Yeah. I think when you realize that there's more, I would say attending the Publish and Paid live experience and just hearing the stories of what other people were able to do with their book.
Mhm.
And I was like, man, I want that. I want to do that too. I didn't realize. I know you'd always talked about like beyond the book, and you had so many different webinars and workshops about it. But I don't think I really had connected myself with, yeah, I can do that too, until I was amongst an event that allowed me to see others in action or hear about the things that they were able to do. And then
Mhm.
as I was able to make those relationships and connections, and you begin to share stuff, it's like, okay, well, here's some more details about how I
Yeah.
did that and what it is you may want to do. Or sometimes like you'll get like a tool or just like a slight change in your perspective, that's all
Mhm.
you need to have that light bulb aha moment, and be able to move forward and say, you know what, I think this is where I want to go with this. And for me, it was more so stepping into like speaking opportunities. Started with
Mhm.
podcasts. Early this year, I was able to talk with the United States Department of Agriculture. The Black Speakers Network sponsored a virtual health summit. I was able to do that. And I think I just got to the point where I said, look, just sign up and commit. And once you've already, the person has said, yes, I'd like for you to do this, you got to do it now. regardless of how nervous you feel, or oh my gosh, I'm gonna stutter, or I'm gonna look bad, or what if I get up there and go blank? Oh well, you committed to it now. You you gotta go. You know, was it one of the oh, so here was one of the things I got out of the conference was I was talking with LB and I was telling her that, yeah, I write poetry or whatever. She was like, all right, well, I want you to go and do a spoken word. I was like, all right, I'll take on the challenge. And so
Okay.
earlier this year, and look, I'm driving to the event and my heart was palpitating. I was nervous and I was like, I don't care. I want this. I want this moment and I'm gonna take on this challenge. And yeah,
Yeah.
I got up there, I was kind of quivering and I felt my legs all. I was like, I don't care. I'm gonna step into this because guess what? Every morning, what I've been telling myself, I'm a world class speaker.
Mm.
It doesn't matter how long it takes, like my mind and body to catch up. I'm speaking it, and so I'm reprogramming that subconscious mind to where I don't know what else to believe other than that. So when opportunities come up, go do it.
And you are reprogramming it through intentional action.
Yes.
Going deeper in, like, you're taking intentional action and you're going into the thing that makes fear or apprehension arise. I mean, that is the way to grow.
Yeah.
That is the way to grow. That is the way to get past your current limitations.
Yeah.
That is the way to, when we talk about stepping into your next, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Really leaning into those things that we find challenging and doing them anyway.
Yeah.
So that we don't have anything else to be scared about anymore afterwards. How did that go, by the way? How was that experience?
Oh, you know what? I had so much fun. And there's so many other people there who had like stories to where I'm like, wow, like this is amazing. This is another way to connect with folks.
Yeah.
And the person who was sponsoring the event allowed me to set a booth up, and I was able to sell some books. So I'm like, yes. Look, I'm like, wait a minute. I spoke for my poem, maybe lasted maybe 3 minutes, and I made I think about $80, $80 that day. I'm like, man, let's do the math here. You know, 3 minutes, $80. That's a good that's a good combo. Let's do a couple.
Yeah.
The other thing is you don't know who's in that audience.
That's
Who
almost $100 in 5 minutes.
yeah, yeah.
Some
So
people charge 100 an hour. You made right at that in about 5 minutes.
yeah. And when I got done with it, I was like, you know what? I actually had a good time. And there is like kind of an emotional high you get from like
Yeah.
I overcame something that I was, scared of or nervous about. And look at the result. And there were folks who wanted to, get my contact information and want to collaborate later on. And okay, I'm like, I got some follow-ups here. And then, oh, we're gonna have these on a monthly basis. Well, I'm gonna try to come back and do this some more. So
Mhm.
one of the things I talk about in my book, Eating Jupiter, is making discomfort a friend. And that was one of the things I
Mm-mm.
had to really embrace because when you're stuck in fight or flight, when you're stuck in a crisis mode, when you're stuck in emotional dysregulation, like it's always there, it's always present. And for me, it was from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed. Uh,
Mm.
it didn't matter what I was thinking about. Like it was always there with me to the point where I had agoraphobia, fear of leaving my house and fear of going to other places. And, the other presenting symptoms were there: tight chest, tight throat, tight sinus, heart palpitations, high heart rate, heart rate over 130, 140, insomnia, reflux, all the things. And so it was a constant state of being uncomfortable. And
Mm.
you have to lean into that uncomfortability and realize and really reprogram your brain to let it know that you're not in any danger. You're just
Mm.
uncomfortable. And there's a difference. When there's real danger, yeah, you need to go to hospital. You need to be, get some scans done, some blood work, or emergency surgery, whatever goes along with that. There are arenas to where you are required to seek like emergency help. But
Mhm.
we're not talking about that. This is okay, you've had like days upon days of tests and blood work. Now it's time to trust the results of all that stuff and step into the things you need to do to overcome this. And that is
Mhm.
embracing and accepting. That's another powerful tool is the ability to accept reality. And that was one of the things that I struggle with in therapy, where my therapist had pointed out, she said, you are still living in this fantasy in terms of your expectations. And I didn't like it. I didn't like hearing that. But truth is going to do that. And if you ever want to grow, some of the truth is going to be uncomfortable. You know, in order to step into who you're supposed to be, you have to let go of who you are. And you cannot take an old mindset into a new season. It's
Mm,
impossible. And
it's
that's what
impossible.
that was one of the things I noticed when I published my book. I'm like, I'm still in this old mindset, even though I've come into a whole new era. Nope, I'm going to therapy. You're not going
Yeah.
to spoil this. You're not going to take this from me. I'm going to walk into this whole new arena of who I'm supposed to be, and have the confidence I'm supposed to have, and not all these old voices telling me I'm not good enough. I am.
Just the level of self-awareness, is and to say, listen, I realize I'm here. This isn't conducive to my future. Let me go get professional help to deal with this.
Yep. Yep.
That's the level of self-awareness that, especially as an entrepreneur
Yes.
is priceless, honestly. So look,
Yep.
everyone listening, we're going to put Darius's information down below where you'll be able to follow him on social media, check out his website. Before we close out, Darius, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Before we close out, can you leave our listeners with one piece of advice that you wish you would have had?
Gosh, I think it goes back to understanding the power of vulnerability. Right. The definition I talk about in my book is it's not weakness, not to be confused with that, but being open and trusted environments.
Mm,
Therapy allowed me to do that. The Impact University Facebook groups allowed me to do that. Sharing my story allowed me to do that, and I've gotten so much wonderful feedback. I've gotten so much wonderful growth, um, pushing past all the limitations that I thought, at one point that my life was just going to be stuck in this place of, fight or flight. I thought
mhm,
life was over, and
mhm,
that was why when I went to the Publish and Paid live event last year, it felt like a graduation, and I was so emotional because I was like, I'd never imagined myself being at this point where I suffered for 4 years, but now I'm able to tell a story about it and being, recognized for, you know, growing from where I was of being totally debilitated to, where I am now, able to stand proudly and share all the weaknesses and the vulnerabilities I'd gone through. Stepping into that is a superpower. And I found my superpower in the darkness, which was hope. And I
mm,
hitched my wagon to it, and I was like, okay, this is my gift back to the world. But I would not have discovered that had I not stepped into the vulnerability.
so good. So good. So good. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on to this episode today. You all make sure that you check out Darius's book. Where can everyone purchase a copy of your book, Navigating? I keep saying Navigating Anxiety Recovery, but I know that's your
That's what
subtitle.
it is.
Leaving Jupiter, Navigating Your Anxiety Recovery.
Yes.
That is the title of Darius's book, Leaving Jupiter, Navigating Your Anxiety Recovery. Where can everyone purchase a copy of your book?
Yes. So you can purchase a copy in two places: on my website, beyond-anxiety.com, where you get an autographed copy from yours truly. Or you can also go to Amazon. If you keyword search Leaving Jupiter, my book will appear along with the Leaving Jupiter Daily Journal, which I also encourage you to get, because journaling is a non-negotiable. That's another key piece that we could talk a whole another hour about, but so very critical, because you need to be able to track your progress, and you need to
Mm,
be able to look back in time when your mind becomes discouraged and wants to lie to you and say, "Oh, you haven't done anything, or you have to start over." No, you don't. Just you. The mind looks for evidence. You have it there in the journal.
mm.
Also, you have that journal, so you can go to your therapist as well as your primary care physician and talk about all the things that you're dealing with. Again, going back to vulnerability, it's all there written. Don't hold back. Say everything that you're dealing with, so you can get a proper diagnosis and path forward.
All right. You all make sure that you grab a copy of his book and his workbook journal. We're going to put those links in the show notes, along with how you can connect with him on his website and social media. And once again, make sure that you like this episode, leave a comment, subscribe, share this with a friend, and we will see you on the next episode. Peace, love, and impact. Until next time.